The countdown to 2026 is on, in which Jason told me today, and it depressed the life out of me, that we will be well into our 30s by the time.
I'll be 36, you'll be 38.
I'll be 58. Yes, it seems a long time away, but in World Cup years, it's not that long because we have, obviously, the next World Cup fast approaching. And then from that, we move forth and we will have the 2022. And then after that, we'll move from Qatar to possibly a combination of the US, Canada, and Mexico hosting the joint World Cup.
It's very likely because two of the continents are out of the question. In this case, it is, where is my quote? Europe and Asia are not in contention because they are hosting 2022 and 2018.
Yes.
Therefore, the United States is pegged to get it. And here's the funny thing, with the 2026, this joint bid, the more you read into it, the more of it is, let's be inclusive to include Mexico and Canada. They will get 10 games each, none of which to be probably the quarterfinals, semifinals, or final on their turf. Which is interesting because with, I believe, about 50 matches, I have a card with some of the breakdown of this for 2026. In addition to that, by the way, before we even, this will be if there is even a World Cup in 2026, we have to get through Russia and Qatar.
Yes.
And by that point, they might just say, look, these are crimes against humanity in 2022, which is an actuality. That's actuality, what's going on in Qatar. But in terms of 2026, we have a card that kind of highlights what the three major points are. The US would host 60 games, while Mexico and Canada will each host 10. President
Gianni
Infantino, thank you, has no guarantees that each of the hosts will earn an automatic World Cup spot because usually there's one country that has the host,
yes,
so they get it. But in this case, Mexico, the US, and Canada will all probably have to qualify. Europe and Asia are now eligible to bid on the 2026 World Cup because they are hosting 2018 and 2022. Francis, we've talked about this time and time again.
So that means the US or Mexico or Canada might not be guaranteed, meaning they'll have to go through the rigorous process of qualifying through the CONCACAF? Jesus Christ.
Has Canada succeeded recently?
Dude. Yeah, Canada's actually in a different kettle of fish because I'm not that big of a team.
Fine.
But the qualifying is a joke in comparison to, yes, I'm very biased. We get thrown into groups every year with some of the toughest teams in the world. Our group this year is not that bad, and we're still making an absolute ass out of it.
That's what we do. Scotland and move it
to America. We're trying to separate from England, so what will actually happen is
we'll trade you Texas for Scotland.
They'll just cut the island and we'll just float until we find our way, and we'll just guide ourselves over to
Scottish people with paddles rowing their way
joining down, and then Trump would be like, nope, wall. So the funny thing is, I wanted to make reference to a quote that I was pulling up here on the article. It's like when they were talking about who will have the vast majority of matches, and that whether or not it will be majority US because we don't know how things are going to plan out. Sunil Gulati, who's the soccer president in the US, said, everything gets decided in conjunction with FIFA.
Yeah.
Which basically means, yes, the US is going to get the majority of the games because one thing that draws FIFA is the money, and more people will watch and go to watch in the biggest country out of the three that are in conjunction.
Actually, 1994 tournament was hosted here. It's the World Cup attendance record, and it still stands with nearly 3.6 million spectators for only 52 matches. So we'd have 8 more matches. Look, this is
because they added more teams.
It's going to sound arrogant because it's an American talking about soccer, which pisses off the entire world's population for whatever reason. Having said that, there are places that were never capable of holding a World Cup. We have discussed in length about 2016 and Rio de Janeiro and the Olympics, which we knew from 2014, which again, and I repeat, was an absolute failure on the part of FIFA and crippled Brazil, especially Rio's economy. Economically, they have stadiums that are literal bird shitters. That's what they are for now. And infrastructure-wise, usually some countries need to build this. So it sounds arrogant to say that the US is one of very few places who logistically can handle a World Cup. With a joint enterprise with Canada and Mexico, of course they can too. But it's not like we're building stadiums. We have them all across the country. The same could be said for places like France, in Europe mostly, London, England. These places can host World Cups. Rio cannot. And then I know that there's going to be a push, and I don't mean this in any offensive way, for Africa to host a World Cup. But again, there's not many places that are able to.
Qatar
can't host
because if
one.
it was on paper that the tournament would go in, it would help strengthen the economy, then yeah, you would think to yourself, let's get this place to other places in the world that aren't as strong economically, because then they can use that almost as a springboard to build their economy, but it doesn't work that way.
It's always been a con job.
Because FIFA are not a legitimate organization that looks out for these people.
Right.
They look out for themselves. So they're looking to go in, maybe they try to assist and they provide basically a set of guidelines so that these countries can try and hit this standard. And it's very rigorous. Qatar are literally killing themselves trying to get this done in time, and they have another, 4 years to try and get to that point. They're still struggling, they're still behind schedule. People are dying as a result of it. Therefore, FIFA don't care as long as they're able to meet their bottom line. Like we talked about off camera, corporations, people think they have this form of ethics in that because they're based on a sport that is very inclusive, that they're going to look out for everyone. No, we know FIFA are very shady. Gianni Infantino has inherited Sepp Blatter's monster. I'm pretty sure he's just going about the same forms of practice. So, yes, you're right, Jason. When it comes to a place that can hold it, the US are firmly comfortable. They have stadiums all over the country. They have a fan base that's loyal enough and growing. It's a great place to have it, in my opinion.
The US, in 1994, the US, and I'm missing, when did England host the World Cup?
It was a while ago before that.
It was them, and it was us and England.
Italy was not long ago.
Are the only two countries in World Cup history to have ever made a positive profit margin off of a World Cup.
Interesting.
Because what happens is if you have, and again, it's not like the US's infrastructure is perfect, but if you're going to compare it to Qatar or Brazil, it is. And the thing that comes away, the thing that you have to take away from this is, you need to be in good or relatively good economic standing. If you're China, yeah, you can host a World Cup, man. Of course you can. Russia, to a certain extent.
Korea,
Korea, Japan, again, but these are places that didn't necessarily profit. They didn't do nearly as much damage as what happened to Brazil. And I mean specifically Rio. And again, I can only say it's a doomsday for Qatar in 2022. People say it's being too pessimistic. It's like, at what point do you realize that it has nothing to do with Qatar being the place that should have the World Cup? It's the cheapest place for them to do it, so it costs FIFA almost nothing.
And aside from the economic struggles that countries face, you need to understand that to take this sport, which is the world's biggest and greatest sport in many opinions, just throwing in that last part, when you throw it into places that they don't uphold the same values, that becomes a conflict as well. That is why people are questioning Russia, because there's still a lot of problems when it comes to the LGBT community who are wanting to go and watch this tournament and are worried about how they may be treated and worried about how that country's political point of view might influence. And you don't want to cross over these two things. They don't want to, but they do, because when countries are going through certain transitions and aren't as welcoming or as accepting as different cultures, the whole reason the World Cup is a greater sport is because you fuse all these countries, all these different cultures together, and everyone joins for their unified love of one sport. So I'm always of the belief that the economy is part of it, but you want to go to a place that can hold the company.
There's a lot of political issues that come with any world event, and especially when it comes to the Olympics or the World Cup. That's why they're discussed in great length, and that's why it's one of the things that I like to talk about the most, because I love the idea of, first of all, I never grew up a World Football fan. I always was a World Cup fan. There's nothing quite like it. If you don't like the World Cup, you don't like sports. It's very simple. It's how it breaks down.
And you know what happens in 2026, Jason? There'll be no Donald.
I'll be 36 years old.
There'll be a new president.
I'll have way more. I'll have like a mortgage.
There'll be a new president that will be into.
I might have a wife. Oh.
What year?
No.
How many years would the new president be in charge by then?
Might have a second wife.
I'm trying to deflect so I don't imagine
Kanye
my
and
life
The Rock
at that point.
will be going into their second term.
Kanye and The Rock will be going into their second term. Ric Flair, if he's still kicking, with 2 chains.
Flair by Flame, 2026. We've already been over this.
That's going to be. Oh yeah, it was Waka Flocka Flame.
Comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe to all the good stuff.